putting those fans up, it was probably the first time I'd felt purposeful. It felt good to put those up. I could have probably done it in 30 minutes or an hour. He drug it out for days. And I put those fans up, and I realized today what he was trying to teach me. If I'll get out of myself and do something for somebody else, it gives God a little room to get in there. I had no clue that was what was happening to me that day. I just know I felt better. That's the only way I could have described it at the time. But I know today what was happening spiritually to me.
Well, hello, friends of Bill W. and other friends. You have landed on Sober Speak. My name is John M. I am an alcoholic, and we are glad you're all here, especially newcomers. Newcomers, that is, both to recovery as a whole and newcomers to this podcast. Sober Speak is a podcast about recovery centered around the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. My job here on Sober Speak is simple. My job is to provide a platform to the amazing stories of recovery all around us. Consider Sober Speak, if you will, your meeting between meetings. Please remember, we do not speak for AA or any 12-step community. We represent only ourselves. We are here to share our experience, strength, and hope with those who wish to come along for the ride. Take what you want and leave the rest at the curb for the trash man to pick up. Gobble, gobble, and greetings from Studio AA, deep in the heart of Texas. That was the voice of our friend Mr. Mitchell F. that you heard on the beginning of this episode number 372 of Sober Speak. And you are going to hear so much more from Mitchell in just a moment. But first things first, this here episode is made possible by Brad. And what may you ask did Brad do? Well, Brad ventured out onto whatever it is, to our website, www.soberspeak.com. He clicked on the donation tab and he made a contribution. So thank you so much, Mr. Brad. This here episode is coming right out to you'ns. Well, I did a little gobble gobble on the beginning of this. This is actually, for those of you listening right when it comes out, this is going to be released. I'm recording this a little bit beforehand, but this is going to be released the day after Thanksgiving here in the United States of America. And hopefully you were able to take time to pause yesterday and be thankful for something in your life. And maybe if you haven't done that, maybe now is the time to do it. And just keep in mind, whatever you see on Facebook and Instagram and all those wonderful pictures, and maybe you're thinking you were left out. Well, it's not always the case. A picture, it does paint 1,000 words, but it is not always reality, right? We're all dealing, well, I shouldn't say we're all, there are a bunch of crazy families out there, right? And sometimes, it's not all rosy. And so anyway, I'm just glad you're here with us today. Hopefully we can give you a relief here during this holiday season. And I'm so glad you've stopped by. I was in a meeting this week and I heard the term ADD, attention deficit disorder. And I thought to myself, do I have that? And then I started thinking, well, no, I really don't think I do. In fact, if I have anything, I have the ability to concentrate so much on a particular item that I can just wear it out. I will sit in my bed at night going over all kinds of numbers and scenarios. I should really not do this. Yes, I do meditate at night, but sometimes my little monkey brain just can't slow down. And so I have decided that I have not attention deficit disorder, but I have attention abundance disorder. Is that a thing? AAB? Maybe we should put that in the, I don't know, the that dictionary or whatever it is in medical area that has all the diagnoses in there. We should have an attention abundance disorder. Or maybe they just call that obsessive compulsive disorder. I don't know, because I definitely got some of that. But anyway, I was just thinking about that this week, and you get to hear some of my ramblings. Now let's get on to what you really came here about, to listen to Mr. Mitchell F. And we recorded this episode, it's been a while, at Icky Paw in Austin, Texas. And I just loved spending time with Mitchell. What a wonderful young man. He has been sober since 2017. Mitchell lives in Montgomery, Alabama, and we're calling this one, the episode, Feeling Purposeful and Alcoholics Anonymous. Mitchell started drinking when he was 13 years old, and he was in treatment by the time he was 14 years old. With Mitchell, we discuss his relationship with the church and religion, some of his anger issues, his tattoos, his prison time, his prayer to God that turned things around, Mitchell's amends to his mom and to the IRS, what he learned about being on the host committee for Icky Paw, the 36 principles of Alcoholics Anonymous, and so much more. I know that you're going to enjoy this, so just sit back, relax, enjoy Mitchell's story, and we will have plenty of listener feedback at the end of this episode. Enjoy. Okay, everybody. So today we are sitting here with Mitchell, and I'm going to go ahead and let Mitchell introduce himself. Mitchell, you could do that. Introduce yourself, give your sobriety date if you wish to do that, and then tell people where you live in this great land of ours, okay?
My sobriety date is November the 12th, 2017, and I live in the great state of Alabama. I just recently moved to the state's capital in Montgomery.
Ah, okay. So Sweet Home Alabama. So I heard them, and I'll talk about this in a little bit, but I heard them last night playing Sweet Home Alabama. Is there a big contingent of those folks here at this conference?
There's probably 8 of us here this weekend.
All right. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and kind of set this up a little bit more. What I mean by that is we are at this is the Icky Paw International CYPAA conference in Austin, Texas. And you actually were invited to be one of the speakers here. Am I right about that?
Yes, sir. They invited me to speak. It was a double header. Me and another lady spoke on Thursday night.
A double header. I like that. Okay. And, so obviously people could tell that you are not from New Jersey. Well, you've already said it where you're from, but you're not from New Jersey, right? And I love your accent. Do people talk about it a lot while you're here?
Absolutely. I get a lot of grief about my accent, and alcohol did not do this to me. This is from being born and raised in Alabama. This is the way we talk there. This is deep Southern accent.
I understand. So you said you are living in Montgomery right now, right?
Yes, sir.
All right. So let's just have a little conversation here. So first of all, how are you related, not related to, how do you know people within Icky Paw? Have you been to other Icky Paws in the past?
I have been to one Icky Paw in the past, but when I got sober in Huntsville, Alabama, and when I moved back home, it was a hard transition just because anybody that's moved in a fellowship and you go to another home group, they're just not doing it right.
Yeah.
And it was really hard for me to find a sponsor. And about a year sober, I found myself on the side of my bed with a gun in my mouth, because if this is sobriety, you can have it. And I was invited to an area assembly where some enthusiastic young people were outreaching Alabama Conference of Young People in AA. And I went to it, and I got deeply involved, and we bid for it, and we hosted ourselves. And I started traveling to all the different YPAWs in all the different states. And then I started getting invited to speak at different ones, and I just met a lot of people, and it's really enriched my sobriety. It's enriched my enthusiasm for Alcoholics Anonymous, and it's just enriched my life as a whole. Some of the things I've learned in service and the friends I've made in the endeavor.
Very nice. And so we've had actually an episode on YPAA in the past, but why don't you explain to people, just so they know, young people and alcohol is YPAA, and then there's all kinds of acronyms they put on the front of those things. So why don't you just explain to people what it is so they know, in case they're hearing about it for the first time?
Well, typically, it's whatever region or state it is with YPAA at the end. And it's like CircuPA is the Southeast Regional Conference of Young People in Alcoholics Anonymous. And then ALCIPA, I love ours, it's fitting, the Alabama Conference of Young People and Alcoholics Anonymous. And each state has their own, and it's really great to see the unity because each state support each other. This state will come to that state's, and they come together. And what I went from going to all these things as a guy that was isolated and couldn't find a friend in the world to a guy that there are a few states I can go to where I don't have good, solid relationships.
Ooh, very nice. Okay, so let's back up a little bit here then. So, everybody has a kind of I want to say a story, so to speak, something that got them into Alcoholics Anonymous. So why don't you start, just you give me a thumbnail sketch of what you want to tell me about your time before you got to AA.
My time before I got to AA, and, I didn't know it then, but from as young as I can remember looking back, I was always the guy that you could tell me a million good things about me, and I never could hear it. But if you ever said one bad thing about me, I'd put it in my bag and I carried it with me. And it really didn't even have to be bad stuff. I lived under the burden of potential. My mother was always telling me all the potential I have, and in my head, I'm like, I'm really not holding that much back. This is all I got. And as far as God, I was raised in church. And I was raised, and I won't say which denomination because I'm sure it's not their fault. And I don't want to put any bad mark on any denomination, but I went to these places, and I'm sure they told me how much God loved me a million times, but they told me I was going to hell one time. And I put that in my bag, and I carried it with me. And the only way I could figure you would want me in hell is if you hate me. So I spent most of my life hating God more. That's just the way I react to somebody's hate to me, is I hate you more. And I was introduced to alcohol probably 13 years old. I was in my first treatment center at 14 years old. So
wow.
I don't know what it's like to become alcoholic. The first time I ever drank, I drank as much as I could and as fast as I could. And I was never...
And let me ask you real quick. So obviously you're that young. There's a family there. Somebody's taking you to treatment, I'm assuming. Did you, brothers, sisters, mom, dad?
My mother had to endure the brunt of my alcoholism. Everybody that touched me had to endure it, but my mother endured the most of it.
Okay. So she sees you going down the toot, and she says, we're going to send him off to treatment. Did it help?
I am a very, very good manipulator. And when I got into treatment, the first one I went to, they sent me home non-compliant. And I went home with a lot of promises to my mother that I was going to do different this time. And I would go to school and come home, and it was about the time AOL 3.0 come out, if that gives you a timeline of when this might have been. And I would jump in the chat rooms all afternoon and tell people lies. I'd lie to them about who I was, because I'm the guy. I'm going to lie to you so you'll like me until you catch me. And then I can't look at your shoe. I can't look at you. I have to go find a new set of friends because I've been caught. And that program of recovery doesn't last very long, I'll tell you. It's I was back out drinking again. The second one I went to, I was about 16 years old, and I went to a place called Bradford Health Services, and my mom's insurance would not cover it. And they offered me a scholarship, but they would not give it to me if I wouldn't comply. So I kind of wiggled myself out of that one.
And just so I understand, so I have a picture in my head, but when you say non-compliance, what does non-compliance look like to a treatment center?
Pretty much they weren't going to waste a bed on somebody that is obviously not doing anything we ask.
Gotcha.
That's pretty much the first one. When I was 13, it was more of a violent non-compliance. I was punching walls, kicking stuff. When I was 16, it wasn't as violent, but it was definite just disobedience. I was bucking the whole thing, and they said, this place costs a lot of money, and we're not going to waste the money on somebody that's not going to try and help themselves.
Yeah. And so, okay, so now you're in there, you're 16 years old. You're having a little bit of a better experience. By the way, this is another question I wanted. So it sounds to me like you are typical of a lot of young men, including myself, had a lot of anger inside you, probably didn't even know where the anger is coming from. Did they try to deal with that anger when you were going through these treatment centers?
I'm sure they did. I couldn't tell you how,
Yeah.
because I was too busy trying to work my way out of it.
Okay.
What that anger was, what I found it today to be, is I was a coward. I was scared to death. And I didn't know that then. It's taken years of inventory to figure it out. But that behavior was because I was scared. I was living in fear, and I had no clue what it was.
Came out of bravado. You know, there's a guy that I know, his name's Andrew, who goes to my home group, and he talks about how, and I'm looking at you, you have quite a few tattoos, which is cool. And how did you end up getting those before you came into Alcoholics Anonymous, or after, or a little combination of both?
I had a lot of them before I came into Alcoholics Anonymous. I got my first tattoo in a county jail, several in prison, and I've spent most of my sobriety covering up inappropriate gang signs.
Gotcha.
That also are a result of fear.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. And so that's what my friend Andrew talks about. He says the reason he put these tattoos on his bodies was to kind of scare people away, right? To put up a front for all the fear that he was having in his life. And it looks like you did the same thing. All right. So 16, you're in the second treatment center. Go on from there. I just picked up that we're going to end up in prison here eventually.
I was in prison by the time I was 18 years old. I stole my grandfather's guns. And because when I put alcohol into me, I never thought there was something wrong with me because I drank too much. My problem was always that I never could drink enough. No matter how hard I tried, I could never reach the point where I had enough. And I was at that point one time. I was out of money and I needed more alcohol. And I stole my grandfather's guns and went and sold them. And I was caught a couple days later. And I was tried as an adult at 17. I went to prison at 18.
Was your grandfather the one pressing charges?
He was. And my poor grandfather, I was raised in Piedmont, Alabama. And he owned the Piedmont Journal, the local newspaper. So he had to put in his newspaper that his grandson stole his guns. And I'll never know how hard that was for him.
Yeah. Oh, my goodness.
So I can only imagine the hurt and anger of what he had to do. I can't say that I would have done anything different.
Yeah. And I'm thinking, my immediate reaction is, God bless him. That must be so hard to do. A lot of people can't do that. They don't want the alcoholic to feel that pain, so to speak, and they want to save them from that. But in many ways, I'm sure he was doing you a favor. So how long was that sentence for?
I was sentenced to 3 years. I got all my good time. I think I did a little over a year in prison. Then I got on parole, and then I hit a pine tree driving drunk, and then I was put back into prison because I could not finish the parole, and I EOS'd my sentence. I probably did a total of 2 years in prison.
Okay. All right, so I want to go back to that gang signs within the prison system, being inmates. By the way, we get, just so you know, I know you have no idea who I am, what's going on. I know Casey just came and got you and said, hey, we want this guy to record you. And you're like, sure, man, whatever I can do to further the cause. Thank you very much. But we have like a lot of inmates who listen to this particular podcast. And it's kind of why I'm, want to dive into this area a little bit more. So, okay, talk about the gangs in prisons, how you got set up with them, what the tattoos were like. You just tell me as much as you want to tell me about that.
When I came into this world, I come in with a family and I come in with old ideas, and the ideas weren't even mine. I was raised in a family that taught me to be racist. After an inventory, I found that I was never racist. That was somebody else's stuff I carried around, And I got to prison, and where it is really, it's a really big battle in behind the walls, and I'm trying to be careful and not be offensive to either side, because I don't think that's right, but that's basically what got me into it. They pretty much, when I got to prison, I was taught to be scared of this other race. And the only protection that I would get from them is this gang. And so I got involved in them, and thank God I didn't do much time in there, because there was one guy in there with me that he went down on a 5-year sentence. And before I left, he was already up to 15 years for things that he was doing for these gangs, and which didn't make a lot of sense to me now, or it doesn't now, but then it looked cool. It really, to me, I remember looking at this guy as one of my heroes, because he is willing to take 10 more years in prison for his loyalness to this gang. And I'd never seen loyalty like that before, and I didn't really know what I was doing, and I got involved in it. So I have all these racial marks on me that they put on you to, okay, you're this guy and you're with this gang, so you got to have this mark and these lightning bolts. And but my sister has a mixed child that's my nephew. So when I got out, I've spent most of my sobriety covering them up, because it's just not the world we live in today, and it's not who I want to be. But absolutely, fear is what drove me into that.
Oh, wow. Thank you for going there, right? I mean, because I know you're not the only one. And just the fact that you talk about it, you're so vulnerable about it, I mean, means just a ton to me. And by the way, are there people in prison? So I said, okay, I went to prison once, right? But it was just for a PI, and I was just there overnight. So I didn't do any hard time or anything like that. And so here's my question. Are there people sitting around with tattoo kits? I mean, how do you get tattoos when you're on the inside?
Well, paper clips. People in prison are there are some bright
resourceful,
minds
right,
behind the walls, and they would take radios apart and have the sporks that we eat off of, and a pen, hollowed out pen, and it would just twist at the top. Some of them made water guns. I've never seen them do it, but it's not, we're not talking about pick and poke tattoos. They have tattoo guns in there.
Well, do people get infections from the
staph infection is a real thing. Hep C is a real thing. Before you leave prison, you always get tested for AIDS, Hep C, STDs, anything like that before they let you back out into the world. And I passed that test.
Okay, so. Good. Yeah, I was just wondering, what sort of, so now it makes sense. And I do have to ask you, so there's, I'm used to seeing tattoos, right? But the one on your ear, I have to ask you about. What is the one on the ear about? Can you talk about it?
That is my zodiac sign, Cancer.
Oh, okay.
That's what, I got it in jail too. I probably wouldn't have it now, but I'm glad that it's just my zodiac sign and not.
It does stand out more than the others. All right. So
I do want to say this about prison, though. It's the first place where Alcoholics Anonymous brought me a message.
Mm.
We were in there, and I that's why I love corrections work today, is because that's the first place where some men come in and brought me this thing called a big book.
Okay, so talk about that when they came in.
I was, because of course the judge saw that I was there for my drinking and probably a little bit of drug use. So I had what they call a SAP return, the substance abuse program. You go to prison, you go through their SAP program, and then they return and ask about parole. And I went down there, and the SAP program, once a week, they had people come in and bring meetings to Alex City Work Release. And these guys come in, they were telling us about the big book. Now, I did not get sober in prison. It did not catch me, but what it did was planted a seed.
Yeah.
And when I was ready, I knew where to go. I knew what to look for.
All right, let's talk about that part then. So you get out, take me through the next period of your life to where you kind of have a entree into Alcoholics Anonymous.
So I got out of prison and I met this girl and I went to church and I was trying to seek. My mom just knew that church was the thing, and I'm not saying she's wrong. I'm not, but I couldn't see through. I was giving it my best shot of what I thought I heard. And I was doing it completely wrong, I'm sure. Because they were telling me things like, why don't you fast? And I would. And I'd pray and I'd ask God to help me fast. And 5 o'clock, I'd get hungry and I'd eat. And I knew God hated me because I didn't finish the fast. Mm-hmm. And it was just little things like that. And I don't think God really hated me, but I didn't finish the fast and I felt like a failure. And I'm not going to be the failure. I know God hates me. That's the problem here, And I got sent to several treatment centers. I was in and out, and finally my mother threw me out. She just couldn't take it anymore. She put me out on the streets, and I stayed homeless for the next 6 or 7 years, panhandling money, trying to drink. In the wintertime, in Alabama, it does get cold. It's not very long, but it does get cold. Yeah. And it got cold enough for me to check myself into these halfway houses and stuff until it warmed back up. And that's what I used halfway houses for a long time, as a place to warm up and fatten up. And then when it was time to go, I left. And I've probably been in 20 halfway houses and treatment centers. When they wouldn't take me anymore, I'd check myself into the psych wards. It's just it's a tough life. It drove me to, I guess that went on for 6, 7, I don't know. It gets to a point where every day just seems like the next day and you're just doing what you need to get by, and it all runs together. But I do know when I was about 29 years old, I was sitting on the side of a bridge. It was an overpass that goes over Interstate 20, trying to drink up the courage to dive into the next 18-wheeler that come by, because I can't do this anymore. I'm done. I don't see a way out. This is, I think, one of the basic texts, Dr. Silkworth says it the best. I was willing to make the supreme sacrifice rather than go on and fight. I was tired of fighting. Mm-hmm. And a great man of the cloth coming, he sat down. He didn't come and talk me off the bridge. He come out there on the side of it with me and started talking to me, and he took me back to a church. It was St. Michael's and All Angels in Anniston. And they used to have nuns there that are not there anymore, but there was this house. And he went to bat for the vestry. Somebody in the church gave me a job. Somebody in the church helped me get a car. They give me that place to stay. And they gave me everything that I thought I needed to make me happy. All I had to do was clean the church, and these people were going to help me. And the guy that was helping me wasn't a priest, and it was an Episcopal church. And if you're not a priest in an Episcopal church, you can't consecrate bread and wine. So the bishop would come down every quarter and consecrate enough for that quarter. And before church one Sunday morning, about 3 weeks into this, they come into the coffee hour room, and I had found Jesus's blood, and I had drank every bit of it. And it still didn't have a spiritual experience, you know. And that priest had to uproot his family and be transferred to another church because the community was so mad at him because he tried to help me.
Oh man. Okay, so he tries to help you. He gets in hot water. What comes next?
I went back to the abandoned house I'd been living in, and I checked myself into the psych ward for what I hoped to be the last time. And on my way home, they gave me these 2 prescriptions. And one of them was for Haldol and one was for lithium. And I was like, I know what I'm going to do. I'm taking every one of these and it's over. So I went by a place that's called All Saints. And what they do is if you need your power bill paid or some prescriptions filled, or they will get them filled for you. And I took it by there because I couldn't even afford to get the prescriptions filled to kill myself. You know, that's how cool I was when I got here. You know? And I took them back home, and I remember I ate all of the Haldol, and then I got the lithium out, and it's a pretty big pill. I dumped them out, and I thought, man, this could probably kill me. So I put like half of them back, and I don't know why, but it was a battle in my head, like, no, you need to take it, you need to do this. Everybody's better off without you. You're only hurting. Your life doesn't benefit another human. And I went through this battle, and I finally took them, and I got to feeling funny, and I tried ramming my finger down my throat, and I'd try to take a few more, and it didn't kill me, of course. And really, I didn't want to die. I just didn't know what else to do, but I passed out for like 5 days, and when I came to, I got the big book. I called a member of Alcoholics Anonymous. I hung up on him because he didn't want to help me the way I thought I should be helped. You know, he wanted to take me through a book and take me to a meeting. I needed like a shower and a place to live, and the car, the things that I had just been given is what I thought I needed. Although it didn't work that time, I still thought it would. And I remember getting on my knees and praying, and I told whatever's out there, I don't know if you even like me. And at this point, I don't care. But if you'll help me, I'll do whatever it takes. And I white-knuckled it through the next day. And this one day, I realized something that I'd never realized before in my life, that I was going to need some help with some skin on it, or I was going to drink before that day was out. And I knew there was an AA meeting a few blocks down the road, and I walked to the Aniston group. And there was this guy in there. It was the same guy I just hung up on when I called. And he was the only guy at the meeting. I was like, I don't know if I even want to go in here, you know. So I walked in, and I told him pretty much everything that had been going on. There was probably a lot of blame, and, you know, it was my first time telling my story with 0 steps. So I imagine it was just a pity story. And I remember he turned around and smiled and said, I've got just the thing for you. We need to put these fans up. The group had just bought some fans. He was on crutches, and he couldn't put them up. And you need to do this with me. And I was like, this
It's putting you to work.
Yeah, well, what? Fine, we'll put the fans up. I really thought he didn't hear me. He missed something. And he let me explain it to him on the way to get a ladder to put these fans up. And putting those fans up, it was probably the first time I'd felt purposeful. It felt good to put those up. I could have probably done it in 30 minutes or an hour. He drug it out for days. And I put those fans up, and I realized today what he was trying to teach me. If I'll get out of myself and do something for somebody else, it gives God a little room to get in there. I had no clue that was what was happening to me that day. I just know I felt better. That's the only way I could have described it at the time. But I know today what was happening spiritually to me.
Much like what you've done with the Ikipa organization and being involved and being a part of.
Service is like playing with blocks. If I play with the blocks, it leaves me busy so God can work everything out for me.
That's right.
Because if I'm not playing with the blocks, I'm just in his way.
Yes. Okay, so was that November 12th of 2017?
It was. It was. Well, that was the 13th. That was on a Monday. The 12th was the day I woke up out of my pill coma that I put myself in. And I made it through that day. And the 13th was when I walked to the meeting.
All right. So you get to the meeting now and you're feeling purposeful for the first time, maybe in your life. You don't even know why, what's going on. Take me on from there. I'm curious about some of your amends process as well, especially with your mom. Have you, is she still with us?
She is.
Okay.
She is. My mom's, she's the strongest woman I know. I tell you. But from there, he encouraged me to get out of that abandoned house. We tried to get checked in a halfway house in that area, but I had burnt my bridge at every halfway house in that county. Nobody would take me back. They were, this time when I was serious, not like them other 100 times.
Right.
So he found a place in Huntsville that would take me, and I went to Huntsville. And I don't want to spend a lot of time in Huntsville, but I went up there. I got a sponsor. I got all the way to the 8th step, and I had what we alcoholics like to call an idea. I thought, why should I make these amends? I'm 2 hours from home. This will be my amend to all of them. I just won't go back. And God worked it out where the only place I had to go was back home. And I was questioning, why are we doing this? I have made a mess down here.
Mm-hmm.
And I got down there, and the last thing he told me when he let me out of the car was, please get a sponsor. Only request he made, and I couldn't pull it off. I had such a resentment against this place because when I was really wanted to get sober, they wouldn't help me. And I don't know why I had to leave Huntsville. Those were great people. And that's when I found myself at a year sober, ready to blow my brains out. Because if this is sobriety, you can have it. And I went to an area assembly, and I met the guy that sponsors me today, but I didn't ask him to sponsor me. I just realized that he sponsored a guy that looked like he just got elected president. It was elections assembly. He just got elected delegate, but I knew he sponsored that guy. And from where I was sitting, that's just what it looked like to me. And I'm not going to ask any questions, because if I do that, you'll think I'm dumb. So, these enthusiastic young people invited me to this conference, and it was like 2 or 3 weeks out. So I come to Alkipaw, and that same guy was there, and he's not even young. He's in his probably 60 years old at the time. And I remember going up to him, and I didn't ask him to sponsor me. I more or less expressed my need for a sponsor. I don't have one. It'd probably be a good idea to get one, things like that. And he turned around like he wasn't going to do it. And so, I hope you find somebody, and goes to walk off. I was like, whoa, wait a minute. You're not going to sponsor me? He said, well, you haven't asked me. And that was a hard learned lesson, that if I need help, I've got to ask for it. And he sat me down, and he started talking to me about how he felt. And it was kind of weird. We never talked about my drinking. We talked about his drinking. We talked about how he felt when his mom threw him out on the street, how he felt when he took the $10 out of his sister's purse, how he felt when the Navy let him go. But what he was talking to me about is how I felt. And I was like, I don't understand. The last person in the world I thought was going to know how I felt was this dude, because we are nothing alike. He's gay, I'm straight. He's 60, I'm 30. He's in the white collar field, I'm in the blue. Like, we are polar opposites. And I did not think anybody knew how I felt, but this dude said it to me. And after that, I was willing to go through this book with him, and he took me through it line by line. And I got the 4th step filled out. And I went to his house to do the 5th step. When I stood up from his house, before I left his house from that period, I'd already made appointments to do some amends. Like we did 5, 6, 7, 8, all right there. It wasn't we'll come back next time and we'll do 6. He was striking while the iron was hot, and I'm glad he did.
Just like Bill did with Dr. Bob, and he was going down the street making amends. I get it.
So I went back and I made amends to my mother, and my mother, she is such a sweet lady. She gave me one of those, well, just go and sin no more, you're sober, it's fine. And I called my sponsor to brag about it, and I'd completed this amend, and he said, no, why don't you go back to your mother and tell her if you don't clean up the wreckage of your past, you may not stay sober. And my mom, because my sister is one of us too, and to date, she isn't sober. But she come up with the best number she could, and it was a pathetic number, I thought. And so I paid her this number, and it was supposed to be for 2 years. And I'm almost 7 years sober now, and I've been paying that way past what it was because I've caused my mother so much discomfort in her life that if that little puny payment every month lets her know that I'm okay, that I'm not in a ditch and I'm not dead, and it gives her a little comfort, I'll pay it for as long as I can afford it. And now I paid back the IRS a bunch of money. I owed them a little over $53,000, and my sponsor told me to pay them a little at a time. And it felt like I wasn't getting anywhere. It really did. It felt like I wasn't going nowhere. And I got a job, and I was superintendent. And my boss started letting me use his guys and his equipment to do side jobs. And there were side jobs he couldn't get to. Like, he was just giving them to me. If you want to do them on the weekends, do them. So we'd knock out 2 or 3 in a weekend, and I would pay for the material, pay the guys, keep 10%, and throw the rest to the IRS. And I did that for a couple of years, and I finally had them paid off.
Oh, wow.
And I called my sponsor to brag that I had paid the IRS, and he's like, wow, you did that? You're 3 years sober? That's like $17,000 a year. How did you figure that out? And I told him I'd been doing side jobs. And he said, well, did you turn those in on taxes? I was like, no, no. And I remember my sponsor said, so let me get this straight. You've been paying back the IRS money you screwed them out of with money you're screwing them out of. Yeah, I guess so. So he helped me get it all back together, and wound up, I owed him like another $12,000. And I finally, in 2021, I got a $63 tax return. Finally, And then I went into business for myself, so I haven't had another one since.
What kind of work do you do now?
Concrete.
Okay.
I opened up my own business.
Good for you, man. Good for you. All right, so let's kind of wrap a bow around on this, okay? So what you have a lot of folks listening to you out there, right? And they're enjoying your accent, I have no doubt. By the way, have you ever been to Muscle Shoals?
I have.
Gotcha. And have you ever heard, what is that group they say in the song? And Muscle Shoals has got the swamp.
The swamplands. Leonard Skinner.
Yeah. But I think that it's an actual group that actually plays in Muscle Shoals is what they're referencing. But I could be wrong.
Yep.
Muscle Shoals has got the swamp something. Anyway, I digress. As you could tell, I'm like a, what do they call it? Like a squirrel. When a dog sees a squirrel, I just get an idea in my head and I go with it. But nonetheless, so why don't you just share your experience, strength, and hope, kind of the end of the, what I was like, what happened, what I'm like now, and whatever you want folks to know about your experience with either Icky Paw, Alcoholics Anonymous, what it's meant to you, and, just You say whatever you want to say there.
So I guess if I had to drive a point home about Alcoholics Anonymous and my experience of what happened and what I'm like now would not have been possible without all 36 of our principles. Had I stopped in just the steps, I don't think my life or sobriety would be as rich as it is. And I'll tell you, when I jumped on an Alki-Pa host committee and I learned things that I did not know I was going to need. I learned how to budget in Alcoholics Anonymous being a treasurer. Before this, I was an available balance guy. I just check it, and if I got it, you can spend it. That's the way I operated. I didn't understand what a budget was or how to balance a checkbook. I learned how to use Microsoft Excel on a host committee. I learned how to negotiate contracts on a host committee. I learned all the things that I needed to start a business I didn't even know I was going to have yet in AA service.
Yeah.
I learned how to manage people in AA service. I learned how the group conscience works in AA, and all this works in a business setting. I'm not going to say it's exactly the same, but you can put the principles to work in a business setting, and it's just as successful as it is in this setting. And it's not just the traditions. You can put the concepts to work in a business setting. I do it all the time. When I delegate authority, I don't rubber stamp somebody. This is what I want done. When I get back, if what I want is done, I don't gripe about how they got there.
Yeah.
They just do it. I never tell somebody this is how I want it done and this is how you're going to do it. And I want the nail drove here and this is what I want to see. And I let them get to that finished product however. Yeah. And it works out a lot better than micromanaging it. And I can be a lot different places. Yeah. And I would have never learned that if I hadn't been taken through our concepts for world service. I didn't even know what authority delegation was. It's just...
So there's going to be some people listening. We have a lot of people who listen kind of for the first time, and they're trying to figure out what AA is all about. And I know you said the 36 principles there. Why don't you go ahead and talk about the world service traditions, steps a little bit so people know what you're talking about?
The steps are a personal thing that clean me up and get me sober and give me a relationship with God. The traditions and even start me in a relationship with other people. It cleans up what I've done to other people and it starts me a relationship with other people. The traditions are what unify me. They're the things I use in my relationships in and out of AA, and they're what unifies AA as a whole. And our concepts for world service is how we carry our message. The way it is, it's the steps, it is our message. The traditions protect our message, and the concepts perpetuate our message. Oh. That's the way I look at it, and I believe that's the way it was set up. And every set of those principles can be used in life, is what I've found. And anywhere I can use them is usually richer in that area.
I love it. This has been really fun, Justin. Mitchell, I'm so sorry. You can see I'm just, I'm another bozo on the bus. I don't know. I don't even know where the word Justin came from. And, I could go out and edit that out, but I'm not going to. I just leave it in and,
That'll work. That lets everybody know we all make mistakes.
That's right. This has been really, really cool. And if I ever go into concrete, Mitchell, I'm moving to Alabama to come work with you. Okay.
Sounds good.
You're a good man. I appreciate everything you do for AA. I appreciate you as an individual. I'm so glad we got to meet. I'm going to give you my card, so we can stay in touch with each other. And I know that the listeners are going to get a lot out of what you just shared. And I'm going to end it today with, as we always do, page 164 from the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous. It says, abandon yourself to God as you understand God. Admit your faults to him and to your fellows. Clear away the wreckage of your past. Give freely of what you find and join us. We shall be with you in the fellowship of the Spirit, and you will surely meet some of us, like me and Mitchell from Alabama, as you trudge the road of happy destiny. May God bless you and keep you until then. Once again, sir, thank you so much for joining me today. Thank you again, Mr. Mitchell. It was so wonderful spending time with you. You're such a gracious young man, and I just really enjoyed our time together, and hopefully our paths will cross again very soon. If you want to reach out to me or Mitchell, send me an email to John, JOHN, at soberspeak.com. If you want to follow us on Instagram, it is, what is it, at SoberSpeak, all one word. If you want to join the super secret Facebook group that we have, search up SoberSpeak Secret Group on Facebook. Ask for admission into the group and we will get you on in there. Now for a little bit of a listener feedback. Gary writes in, and Gary says, "Hi, John. I just got home from the first meeting of a big book study that I am doing with a small group of men, about 14 guys. I have done it once before, about 2 years ago. Some of the guys are the same and some are new. My sponsor is hosting it at his house. The main reason I did it the first time was to face my fear of straight men. While I did that, the bigger thing was realizing that we are all the same, even though we are all different." Well put, Gary. When everyone was sharing their step 1 homework, I asked if they had written mine. It was so similar. I learned a lot of things about having a voice, how to share, and quote, old school, unquote, AA. I use the worksheets and my sponsees when I take them through the steps. This time around, I went up and introduced myself to each person and said hello to those I knew. I stayed after the meeting and talked to some of them. Fellowship can be challenging for me to do, but I am trying it out and seeing what happens. Good for you. He said, I also just got my copy of Stumbling in the Right Direction, which is a book by Don M. I added that part and added it to my daily readers. While I do not text as many people as he did, I do text quite a few people each day, including 3 group texts of gratitude. Keeps me grounded, accountable, and connected. My sponsor is going to start listening to your podcast. I sent him your story to start with, Gary B. Well, very cool, Gary B. Just so you know, Gary B. added that copy of, quote, Stumbling in the Right Direction, unquote, the book by Don M. to his daily readers because he heard Rachel W. on our podcast talking about Don M. and, you know, what a great guy he was. He's gone on to the big meeting in the sky now. And what Gary is referencing is that Don used to send out a ton of texts every day. It's kind of what he did every morning to keep him grounded, like Gary said. And so anyway, a Gary B sponsor, I don't know your name, but if you're listening to us, I'm glad you are. And you have a great sponsee there, Mr. Gary V. Love him to death. Chloe writes in, and Chloe says, hi there, John. Thanks for your podcast. I have been listening to Sarah G on episode number 271, and I have so many similarities to her story that I am not hearing in my local 12-step groups. She says, I'm in the United Kingdom. I was wondering, maybe I should read this in a British accent now. I was wondering, no, I said, hold on. I was wondering whether it might be possible to get in touch with her for a chat. No worries if this is something you don't do. Thank you again for your podcast. It is so helpful. You know, you would think if somebody's going to do a British accent, at least they would do a decent one, right? And I'm so sorry. But anyway, Chloe, thank you for writing in. As you know, I got you in touch with Sarah G and got out of the middle from you guys. And I hope you all can strike up a productive conversation. And then finally, I wanted to read this because I saw it this week in the super secret Facebook group. Jason, and Jason is one of we have several people in there that are like, they post pretty much daily. It's, to me, it's like it's another version of, what do you call the daily reflections that we have in Alcoholics Anonymous, where, you get the date and they give you a little quote, and then they write after they quote from the big book or something else, and then they give you some feedback after that about what they think about the reading. But anyway, Jason posted this in the Facebook group, and I needed to hear it today, and I thought, well, if I needed to hear it, maybe somebody else does. This is from page 86 of the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. It says, "We ask for inspiration, an intuitive thought, or a decision. We relax and take it easy. We don't struggle." Page 86. I'm going to read that again. We ask God for inspiration, an intuitive thought, or a decision. We relax and take it easy. We don't struggle. Alcoholics Anonymous, page 86. And if you want to see Jason's comments that came on, or that he put in there right after that, there's some great comments. Join that Facebook group with us, and we'd love to see you in there. All right, everybody, that there is another episode. What is that? 372, episode 372 in the can, in the books, as they say. Keep coming back. It works if you work it. I do this 1 week at a time. I hope to be back next week visiting with you all, but you never know. And the final thing is, may God bless you and keep you until then. Love you guys. Have a good one. Bye-bye.